paint and we're in an FHA or VA scenario. Or we have a recalled Federal Pacific, one of those in-scope panels. Or you want to try to go through the home and try to anticipate problems, anticipate what's going to happen during that inspection piece, okay? If is anybody here not familiar with what FHA and VA require, that's something we can probably talk about, or spend a little bit of time on today. They're looking for a roof that's going to last 3 years or more, and primarily looking for safety issues. Okay, so one window has to open in every room. The appraiser has to take a picture of the attic. They're looking for handrails and stuff. They're looking for trip hazards. They're really looking for insurance and safety risk. Okay?
What was that attic picture for?
I don't know why the VA and FHA require that. I suppose they're looking for mold.
I wonder if maybe like a fire. I just had one, my only transaction that ever fell through, the inspector found an attic fire that hadn't been on the seller's disclosure.
Ooh.
And he was a VA loan. Not that, we wouldn't have bought it anyway.
Yeah, well, whatever they're looking for, I was assuming mold's one of them too.
Yeah.
But those things, and it's something you can anticipate or at least set the table with your seller, is that if we do accept an FHA or VA, to make sure it's clear, that attic is clear during the appraisal, which an inspector's gonna go up there anyway. But sometimes they get mad when much insulation drops, it's all over their clothes, and we've all been there, right?
And if there's not access to it, they won't go in. An inspector cannot get in, so sometimes you just need to prep your seller that you need to have access to. They need to be able to get access to the attic.
Sometimes it's popped shut or something like that, and then all of a sudden the inspector's gotta come back, because they don't wanna rip it open.
Frustrated.
Everybody's frustrated. So that's what I kind of mean by setting the expectations. Also from the seller standpoint, and I thought this would be a great brainstorming, will we do it here now together, or we get together in a mastermind group? Because an agent called me last week, and it was, the seller moved out and the buyer was upset it wasn't clean. It was empty, but it wasn't clean. And what's the responsibility of a seller? How clean is clean enough? How short should the lawn be? They're out of state and we have a big dump of snow. Now I'm moving in, the driveway's got 1.5 feet snow. We got, come on in, Cindy. We got walkways that are kind of treacherous. What can we do to make sure this doesn't happen to us at the final walkthrough or closing? And for me, I call it setting expectations or setting the table. Having the conversations with the seller at the time of the listing. Maybe having something pre-written would be a good idea. And providing them that and saying, hey, this is what we expect out of you. Or that's kind of mean to say it that way, but these are what the expectations are. This is when you can expect the utilities to be transferred. Don't cancel your insurance until I physically hand you your proceeds check. You cancel your insurance and you forget that you canceled your insurance and something happens in a delay of closing. There could be a gap there that's not covered. Not to mention, you can't just call your insurance company and say, hey, I need an extra 3 days on my canceled insurance. They make you ante back up for a full year. Okay? It's real easy to make that phone call after you receive your proceeds check. The cleanliness of the house, going over with them, taking pictures off the wall and having nail holes and having those filled and possibly painted and touched up prior. Having a lawn mowed a week before or 5 days before there's a move in. If you just have these conversations with people, what their expectations are, they can plan accordingly. But we've all had those sellers, and you've been in the business long enough, right, Cindy? That seller that didn't mow for 2 weeks because they actually left for Iowa City and they just didn't think through it.
They didn't get a high enough price, so I'm not gonna mow that lawn. They're trying to inch out of everything due to the price.
Due to the price. And then sometimes you forget it's winter time, you didn't anticipate someone shoveling, and now all of a sudden I got these movers coming in and we got 1.5 feet of snow that just came because we didn't have someone on the ready to take care of these things. So these are things this is what I mean by setting the table. So for your seller, as well as we'll move into the buyers and setting realistic expectations for the buyers too. But as far as cleaning the property, I've always told my sellers, clean this as you would want it coming in. It's an exciting time for a buyer, and we can really kill that mood and enthusiasm by having something that isn't ready for them. Most buyers are going to clean anyway, a little extra because it's never good enough. But not running a vacuum and not opening up your cabinets and seeing breadcrumbs everywhere and sticky syrup from, we all have kids and stuff gets everywhere. Not spending the time to do that or cleaning the oven or the refrigerator properly. It just dampens the whole thing. Now you have unhappy clients who aren't raving fans, and that's what we're trying to create. Okay.
Just a few things. For sellers, I just ran into this on a listing. My name's Michelle Hansen. There's a lot of faces in here that I don't know. So a few things I ran into is I try to manage expectations with a buyer's going to ask for. So it's not me, but I was at least the one that told them, we're going to need to clean those windows. And then I give them a window cleaner. It made all the difference in the world on this townhome because it had beautiful windows, but they were really, really dirty. And so she couldn't have been happier. And it was like $150 spend. But that was one thing that it just has to be as clean and as pretty because in the professional pictures you're about to pay for, it's going to look all filmy. So setting them up to succeed, stretching carpet, I try to really protect their pocketbook. We've got some wild colors right now going on. I guess I didn't think they were that wild, but I can use a current listing that I have. Red in the kitchen, not terribly unnormal, but red in the kitchen, and then purple in the sunroom. And we're going to repaint them only because we need reasons to buy right now. I don't need one reason to go against a house right now because it's a tough market right now. So I'm not usually the agent that says everything has to be a gray or a white, but I'm starting to hear myself say that. So I wanted to we need reasons to buy so it doesn't sit, and you want them to hear it from you that this may be too bright of colors. Another one that, you get caught on is garbage. All this garbage, or what is this couch doing here? And they're like, well, they didn't want it. We have to communicate with the seller that if you,
Yes.
Please don't leave that on the curb. We're going to need to have hauled that away. I have a hauler on speed dial. But again,
dog poop.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
We've
Yeah.
had that where, your dog has been outside in the yard and all of a sudden you just got landmines everywhere,
Yes.
Those things, but if I find that sellers are normally agreeable, you have to do this before we get into the moving process. Because the moving process is the most stressful part of the transaction. The actual physical part of boxing up your things, dealing with movers, getting in your new place, switching utilities, switching insurance companies, switching schools, switching post office, letting the pastor know. It's stressful. So then all of a sudden to be able to dump down on them, oh, by the way, hire someone to clean up this dog poop, you just triggered somebody. Do it at the front end with a list like you're talking about.
The other thing is sewer. If you've got big trees, you might just want to help them. They know that home inspection might be coming. They may or may not. Everybody feels differently about sewer radon, but a sewer is a really unhappy surprise.
You offer a home inspection with a certain, if they're willing to pay the full package, right? You guys offer an inspector to come through.
We pay for home inspection and radon.
So
we pay.
As a listing agent. So she's actually providing an inspection report as part of her listing packet. And then also probably as a way to say, okay, out of all these things, we should really address this. We're gonna definitely get the GFCIs. We're definitely gonna get the grounded this and we're definitely gonna have to deal with these things.
Again, so if you're new, this new or not, but in my mind, man, I want to walk straight into one of my listings because it's done. Your work is done. Yeah, we got to negotiate, but your work is done. You get to write an offer and you just saw a window to the house is sold. Compliments of us.
So do you do those do you have the house inspected prior to listing, or are you just saying that you pay for
Oh no, it's a full-blown inspection. But
before it's listed though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so when you have a showing request, you receive our radon and our home inspection.
Okay.
Well, I think what he's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not before it comes on the market, yes, but not before a listing is signed.
No.
No, well, yeah.
You know what?
But I'm just
That's a
saying,
good question.
because there was talk when I started
Good question.
4 years ago, people had done pre-listing inspection, or it's already been inspected, here you go. And then when the market got, I hate to say easy, but the market did get easy.
Yeah.
People went away from stuff like that, and so now you're doing that, starting to do that more often now.
Well, actually what I am starting to do is, so we're investing in the house. I mean, right now we've got quite a bit of money on our books, that it'll happen down the line, but it's just an investment. It's just how I want to be known to do business.
Mhm.
Not necessarily before I have the listing agreement signed, because I know,
Right.
I have a good idea of the people, because if it's referrals or whatnot, but people, in my opinion, the market's becoming a lot more unpredictable. And so I've also created a sheet that says, if you get antsy, you'll need to reimburse me.
Right.
That's the nicest way of saying if you want to cancel.
So then with that inspection, you do hand in hand with their property disclosure. So anything he finds, then you put on their property disclosure?
If it's a material defect.
Correct. If it needs updated, or usually we have to go back and update with radon. But seller's disclosure and listing agreement are the last forms that we do. Only because I want to see all of those before we set price.
Cool. And that's just one way to do it. Not everybody does
Yeah,
that, but
just
I
one
do
way.
like the way of trying to keep the deal together from an inspection standpoint, offering that as part of, and showing a buyer, hey, this is what came in the listing. We took care of this, and this, and a buyer kind of goes in eyes wide open. The financing piece is the second biggest way that we see deals fall apart. Are we dealing with a reputable lender? Is it an out-of-state lender? We have to remember two things about out-of-state lenders. Most states, I can't tell you how many, but the overwhelming majority of them are not abstract states. We might be the last one in the
I think
union.
we're the last one.
So they don't know what an abstract is, just generally. Two, we are also one state that does not offer title insurance. A lot of lenders are looking for title insurance. We do not have that here. We have what's called title guarantee. So, and from what I understand, and I've never sold real estate in another state, but from what I understand, title guarantee is a lot better than title insurance from the standpoint of when they go to resell the home, there's less title issues.
Yeah, we have the cleanest titles in the country.
So the title insurance, basically, they just put insurance on the title. And if something comes up, there's an insurance policy up to a certain amount to cover it. So having the abstract that keeps the chain of title, the title opinion, and then the title guarantee from the attorney that did the opinion has been a pretty good method that, at least in my tenure, is, you see less and less. You see less and less title issues from a previous owner,
And the other thing I was going to add on title, when you're talking to your sellers, sounds crazy, but make sure you know that they're still married. Or is there a divorce? If it's a divorce type situation, are they going to be divorced before you sell the house? Or what is their marital status? Because things get really icky. Because I said to Emily, my favorite, I said,
It's my favorite too.
she's my favorite. I said they are married. But I always try to give Emily, I work very closely with her to say, if we've got a excitable situation, on any of my clients, like, hey, let's not have them come into the office at the same time. Let's just, we've tried to be very sensitive to that. But issues can come up. Emily sent me a message. She's like, they're actually divorced. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't know that. But then in title, it came back. It was like, I don't know how this happened, but they think they're divorced, but they're married. And so it was really complicated. And so had Emily waited, that would have delayed closing, and then I would have had a lot of excitement. So I didn't see that coming with title. I knew that things might be strained, but there's just a lot more questions to ask when
It's actually a good point, because
when there's a divorce.
even when they're married, what happens is sometimes they own property that they're selling before they were married, and now they're married. And to have these conversations up front, they want to know why the husband and the wife has to sign for this house. I owned this before we were married. They don't have, and that's just not the way the law is. The law is, if you're married, that property with dower and curtsy rights, if you guys remember that, right? What's his is hers, and what's hers is hers is kind of a joke. but it's his is hers and hers is his. So she does and he does, whoever the spouse is they married that wasn't on title when they bought it, they have to sign for it now. Okay. Now that even goes like, okay, today we're signing a warranty deed. I bought a property on my own to flip, cash. Rachel wasn't even a part of it. But when the warranty deed comes down, she has to sign the warranty deed because she has title to that home too, under our marital status. Okay? So having these conversations with people up front, again, where's their marital status, and let them know that they might not have the wife there or the husband there to sign the listing agreement, which I think is dangerous. They will have to sign the warranty deed.
And if they don't sign, you're not closing. That
Yes.
That's
That's the
basically a
last,
threat, like
and
it's
that's the
not
last
happening.
place you want to be, is 72 hours a week
Correct.
from closing, and then one spouse didn't think the other spouse had a sign, and they're not in the know of this. Okay? So understand that. You ever seen anything like that, Cindy?
Oh, I've got a story to beat all stories.
Yeah.
I had a client.
best stories.
Oh, I
I come here for your stories.
About 3 years ago, I sold a couple of house, and they knew another couple of mine, from Pioneer, and I thought everything looks good. Husband, wife, I assumed, 3 kids. I used Connie Crawford, who is out of business now, she retired. And she called me and she said, about 5 days before closing, are your people married? I said, well, yeah, they have the same last name, and she's wearing a ring, and the kids are always with, they both signed it the same way. She said, well, title opinion came back that he's 17 years behind in child support. And I said, really? And she said, to the person you think he's married to now. And I called him and I said, Matt, are you and Carol married? No, he said, we're divorced. And I said, did you know you're 17 years behind in child support? Oh, he said, I decided to move back in, and we just decided I didn't need to pay her that because we're living together and I was fronting all the expenses. I said, did you ever go back to Union County where you live and go through the courts on it? He said, well, no, I figured if I've been paying, last 17 years for living with her, it'd be no big deal. I said, well, you can't close on this house till one of 2 things happens. You go down to court, get a court date, pretty difficult, and get this all cleared up. Or you get remarried to her. He said, no, I didn't get remarried. We get on great, but it's my get out of jail free card by not getting married to her again. In his words. And I said, well, what do you want to do? We're 5 days out from closing. 2 days later, he called me and said, well, we got married. And I said, okay, then she can sign a form at closing saying that child support is not owed anymore. And he said, okay, so we're closing. And that was like on a Wednesday. This is a guy that never did a phone call to me other than that one. I was text. And Friday morning, we closed in the afternoon. I get a phone call from him. I said, well, you didn't lose your job or anything, did you? I said, you never called me on the phone before. Yeah, Pioneer laid me off today. I said, so, and I called Connie. I said, have you done final searches? And she said, yeah. And I called him. I said, can you hold 2 houses without a problem here? And he said, yeah. And I said, but I know about it. I can't do it. That's fraud. I can't say that I don't know that you lost your job. So 3 weeks later, they had to move into an apartment because they had already sold their house in Union County. 3 weeks later, he called me. He said, hey, want to let you know we're divorced.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, thanks for the info. He said, but if that house goes on the market again, I said, no, they're mad now. They're not going to sell it to you, number one. And number 2, you still have to remarry her or go to court. And Connie had said to me, you never asked him if he was married. And usually I do, like you say.
Right.
Another question I ask is, do you have any back child support? Or do you have any child support or alimony? Because they'll never tell you. They're embarrassed.
Sure.
And you need to know, because there's a lot of back child support.
Yeah.
I had a guy once that the lender called me and said, well, he's been in prison, so he's got some federal liens, and he is behind the child support about $19,000. So until those are cleared up, we can't close. So shake them down in the beginning.
Do you ask them how they want their proceeds distributed? I haven't before, but with the influx of divorces, I am. Just so that we've already had that form signed. We were going to do this 50-50. We're not doing it 100%. Like, you don't get all of it, because that happened too.
But we can't usually divide it out, can we? Doesn't it?
I don't know. Normally, if there's a divorce, Emily is going to want the divorce decree.
Yes.
And the divorce decree will usually outline what's going on.
But sometimes that also says we can't, none of the proceeds can be divvied out until you prove closing has happened.
Uh-huh.
So I've had that happen. We have the decree, but we haven't been able to close, and we can't put the decree into effect until we close.
Gotcha.
It's like I'm really taking on the other thing.
Takes care of that.
Yeah,
How did
and
you do
no,
that?
there's no,
Just
after a
50-50?
divorce, there's a
50-50, it was
judge.
kind of like, I promise I'm gonna get it to you once you sign this, and they did, they were fine, but it was literally
Right.
like, we can't do this until we do this, but they don't wanna do this, and it was.
Maybe
Yes.
at that point be held in an attorney's escrow or something
give
like
it to
that.
the
Yes.
attorney. I ask them up front. I kiddingly say to start the conversation. So now when your proceeds come through, they're mine, right? And they look at me and go, no, they're mine. I go, okay, who does get them if I don't?
That's
And that opens the
good.
conversation without having them feel like I'm getting into their business.
right.
And they go, why would you? I said, I'm kidding. And it opens conversation.
That's good.
So you're asking that when they are already divorced prior to closing?
No, this is sometimes in the process.
Right.
Because I
But
have
is the
one,
divorce decree signed?
I have one couple, the best story, everyone knows Jerry Busmus, right? He was my assistant manager when I was first starting real estate. He had a deal that went up to 2 weeks before closing, actually about a week. And they started feuding and they said, we're gonna get divorced, forget it. So he sent the wife a dozen red roses signed by the husband, and he sent the husband a bottle of champagne signed by the wife. They never figured it out. They closed. Be creative, guys, you know?
That
Yes.
sounds like a Jerry move.
Yes, it does sound like
Little massage oil. Well, I do think, again, I think the biggest thing is gonna be these conversations up front, trying to anticipate what might happen and coming up with ways to have conversations. So saying, what is common with title, when you go over title opinions that are gonna be done as are there any liens on the property you're aware of? Well, what kind of liens? We have back child support, IRS liens, mechanic liens, any small claim liens, right? These are the kind of things. If his name's John Smith, we're gonna need name affidavits. I can tell you that right away. I don't care if you have his middle name, if you have his social security number, we're gonna need name affidavits, right? If it's Tony Johnson, if it's John Jones, right? So we know these things. This is what I mean by experience will help, but that's what I'm trying to do with these classes, maybe curb your experience a little bit so you guys can be better upfront. Collecting the information. The first things first is assessing the home, walking up to the home and assessing, and there's nothing wrong with not offering FHA or VA terms. And so people saying, hey, listen, I'm not doing all this. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. We cannot offer FHA and VA terms on this home, which unfortunately in a $140,000 range might take away 35% of your buyers or 40% of your buyers, right? That changes with the different types of the market. So, having those conversations and then being resourceful and knowing like who to pick up the dog poop and who to take out a couch when it's left there over time. So having those resources at the ready. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Just small questions. I'm curious how other people do it. Like with the nails in the walls.
Yeah.
I told them, just don't touch the nails, because you go to pull one of those big screws out or whatever, and before you know it, it's a plaster roll, and you've got a hole this big, and they're trying to patch it, and the paint doesn't match. And
Yeah.
I mean, what do you guys do? I just say,
Well, and this is
Leave
on
the screws
this is
in
on the
your
other
hands.
side too. When you're a buyer's agent, well, first of all, let's go over what's included with property, making sure a seller and a buyer know, right? Attached items, and they've included now the wall mounts for your TVs. So people will give me an example. Was the curtain rod is attached, the curtains are not. That is basically the good example of that, like your ceiling fans, your rose bushes. And I always say bushes and stuff too, because I had someone one time that had a bush that was sentimental value to them because it was bought by their mother, and their mother's not around anymore, and they wanted to reserve it. That's okay. You have that conversation up front. The buyer that buys it knows this rose bush is reserved, no big deal. If you take that rose bush without someone noticing, and it's at closing, it's a walkthrough, what happened to the beautiful rose bush? Now we have a problem.
There's a dirt trail all the way.
It's dirt, yeah, exactly. This way we can kind of address these things up front. The seller, what can I leave with the property? Nothing, everything that's attached, and nothing that we didn't agree on or that is pertinent to the home's maintenance. That would be furnace filters, touch-up paint, matching caulking that's, for backsplashes. Those
that
things,
has to be left?
no, it doesn't have to be, but it would be acceptable to leave.
Okay.
If
Well, I've
there's,
had the opposite
if
where
there's-
people are mad in final walkthroughs because there's all this paint they have to get rid of.
well, see, there's a thing though, that sometimes there's a whole
Yeah.
wall of paint over the last 15 years, or 50 years there, and then there's two of them that are actually relevant to the home's colors now. That, to me, I'd be upset with too. If it's relevant touch up to the home's colors now, then I would say leave it. But you can also have that conversation with the buyer's agent too, say, hey, we plan on leaving this. We have an extra pallet of flooring, LVT in the corner because of what's in the home. I think that would be okay to leave. That would be, I know I would want it left, extra little pieces, maybe 6, 7, 8 pieces of tile or backsplash that matches the house. Those things I'm talking about pertinent to the home's maintenance and the, what the home's made up of. Those things are okay to leave, but you can't leave the tires. and I can't leave the oil pan in the garage. And believe it or not, no one wants your bald tires. No one wants your, 5-gallon bucket of oil. So having these conversations up front with the seller, having something pre-written for them, setting up the expectations can go a long way. I'm not trying to have these conversations when they're moving and the stress level is ultra high. Okay?
What do you do in like opposite situations? Like when you have discussions with your sellers, like the stuff on the walls, like if it's shelving and stuff that has to stay, and then they just take it. You know what I mean? I've had that where I'm like,
And
you
your
need to go
final
put it back.
walkthrough.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and I'm getting a call from the buyer's agent, they took the stuff, and my seller's like, don't care, we're closed, and then you're kind of in this situation where
Yeah,
like,
well, when you're closed, you're closed. There's not much you can do. At that point, it's up to a buyer to enforce that through, litigation or however they're gonna, we can't force anybody. I just had this conversation. I cannot force anybody to do anything, personally. I can only encourage.
And
right?
that's tricky when final walkthroughs are happening when they're still moving,
Exactly.
so they assume,
We
they're
have
going.
one gal, and this was my fault because I did not set the closing and the possession the way it should have been. And they will not close until the home's absolutely empty. In case, and we can't close on their new house until they close on theirs. So my people are having to get a truck that morning. We pushed it back to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They'll unload everything. They'll come to the final walkthrough at noon, which, if there's any issues, we'll have an hour to work out an issue, which is no time at all. Hope it goes without a hitch. I'll let you guys know it's Thursday,
A key thing that I do when my sellers, and I'm talking about my people, when they're moving, and I know the moving vans were there, I always stop that day towards the end of the day, but before the moving van's gone. Bring them a little snack, nothing major, some donuts, some cupcakes, whatever. Say, oh boy, you've been really busy. Mind if I walk through the house? And unfortunately, I have a really good memory, which sometimes haunts me, but I've caught 3 different half-bath mirrors that have been loaded up. And I'll go, where's that mirror from there? I thought that was going to stay. Well, it's in the back of the truck. I said, oh, half-bath mirrors, 200. What do you want to do? And I just looked them in the eye and they said, but you're our agent. I said, yep, there's a value on every mirror you take. There's a value on every shelf you take that was supposed to stay. They said, what do you want us to do? Go in the truck and get it? And I said, or write a check. And they get really mad. But generally, if they're moving out of state, especially, you're never seeing again. And the situation being, that the other agent's going to be on your case. It's not as much the buyer. It's the other agent. She's going to come on. Well, we need that. Now we need that. And I used to have, I don't tell you more, a separate checking account, which I call my real estate checking account. Anything that was 500 or less. I said, just a minute. I write a check and say, I think we got that covered. Because I didn't want to hear from the agent day after day after day. When all of a sudden they transfer the property and they don't have any front door key, that should be no surprise. You should ask about that when you write the offer. They say, well, we never use the front door anyway. Then I'm calling Midwest Lock to come out. Not only that lock, I might as well change all the locks for them. And I'm tired of it. So at this point, I catch them before the truck leaves. And then there's no surprise. You can't say then when the other agent calls.
She's like City of Des Moines there with the inspection.
Well, it's a matter of when they're leaving, I swear, the movers will pack your garbage under your sink. They will pack your toilet paper. They will pack everything unless they're told not to. They'll pack all your manuals. And then they'll pack your garage door openers if you set them on the counter for the buyer. So I always say, put them in the microwave. That's probably the best place for them, or let me take them. I'm tired of paying for stuff.
Well, and at that point, you have no time to work anything out.
No, you just have to do it.
So the financing piece of this is something that sometimes we feel like is out of our control. And a lot of things are actually in our control. And I'll give you kind of give you like a bad agent on myself here. You get enough listings where enough listings are pending. You need to have some kind of checklist of how those are being funneled down. So one of our listings that was pending this year, I didn't realize the appraisal hadn't been ordered and it hadn't been done. And here we are a week before we're supposed to close. And it was up to me. It's my job to have called a month ago to wonder where this appraisal is. And if you don't have 45-day closing and your appraisal isn't done in 30 days, something's wrong with the financing. The lender knows it. The other agent probably knows it. They're not going to call you. They're trying to figure it out, right? I should have known. So to have
Same
some,
with the buyer or seller, I know.
I was representing, I was the listing agent. And here I don't know that the appraisal's done, so now all of a sudden here we are a week before closing and, we're gonna have a delay here. There's no doubt we're gonna have a delay. And why are we having a delay? Is it something that's gonna come together? Is it something that's not gonna come together? And I should have known about it 3 weeks ago to have it on the market, back on the market 3 weeks ago. So having some systems and check, in place, some checks and balances in place will be good for your business as you get to be more busy. If you only have 3 listings pending, it's not that hard. If you get to have, 8 or 9, 10 of them, it can be, you got 4 or 5 buyers pending. All of a sudden, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's very easy to overlook something like that.
Your lender should be doing that for you. I tell my
I was a
lenders.
listing agent.
Oh,
So
you
I
were the listing
Yeah, I was a
agent.
listing agent. No, I fully expected, the buyer's agent was aware. And I expected obviously the lender was aware, but they're not telling me. They're scrambling, trying to make this debt to income ratio thing work. So that's what it ended up being, was the buyer's debt to income ratio. And they didn't want to inconvenience the buyers spending more money for an appraisal in case it didn't happen. They don't care about wasting my seller's time. They didn't want to spend the buyer's money, which is frustrating.
And I had that happen on this one I'm trying to get close tomorrow, and it was the VA loan, and we had a lot of things worked through in the inspection, and they didn't order their appraisal because they want to make sure we got through the inspection process.
Right.
Which I get, but this was taking a long time. I mean, this process was 3 weeks in, and it's a 45-day closing, and they still haven't ordered the appraisal.
Yeah, see, here's the thing about that, and I've had this happen too, Jacqueline, that's a good point. It's like, by the time you order the inspection or the appraisal, and I hear from the appraiser, we're gonna be through the inspection time. Or not, and we can cancel the appraiser before they actually get there. As a lender, just go ahead and make the order,
Yeah, they would not order it because they didn't want to pay for
Right.
it if we didn't get things worked out in the inspection.
Right? Yeah, that happens. So on the financing side, I think you really want to make sure that you're not, as a listing agent, they're working with reputable lenders, and as a buyer's agent. If they're working from somebody out of state, or they're working with those Rocket Mortgage or something, this is where your sales tactics come into place, why to work with a reputable local lender. You can always use the abstract thing. You can always use the title insurance versus title guarantee thing. You can, all those things to make sure that we have a smooth closing. Because it seems like a lot of the out-of-state lenders, I've had success with them, but it seems like a lot of them are the ones that we generally have the most problems with. Okay. And from the listing standpoint too, don't just take the pre-approval letter as, okay, I got a letter, read through it. There are a lot of conditions on there. Which conditions are normal and what conditions are not, right? They should be subject to an acceptable purchase agreement, executed purchase agreement. Should be subject to an appraisal. Should be subject to clean title. Should be subject to nothing changing on the buyer's credit report and application. Okay. But if it's still verification of W-2s, verification of bank statements, verification of employment, all those things, we are a long way from being creditworthy. They have basically gotten through an application, and based on that application, they're pre-approved. Which I'm not saying don't take the offer. I'm just saying no. Being able to convey that to the seller where that buyer is at in their financing. That way, if the damn thing blows up in your face, at least they knew what you knew.
Your clients will totally forget that conversation though. They will totally forget that we had our questions on that buyer and the financing. And it's okay to work with local. I'm great with local. I'm still trying to figure out, we have a situation right now where it's not so we can point blame, but I'm like, man, if we're gonna spend this much emotional energy and people don't get paid, can we learn from this? And it was a local lender, and I did communicate with the well-seasoned agent. I guess I want to believe that everybody's doing their job, and I think everybody is sometimes doing their job. But if you ever put your guard down and they're like, "Hey, are we good?" I just want to make sure I haven't seen clear to close. I didn't hear clear to close, but the agent said we're good. Well, that means nothing. That means nothing. And I have spent more time trying to make sure that everybody is so good with this local lender. And I believe it is because it happened the day of walkthrough, where the other agent said to me, he's like, I don't know what this means. And this is exactly how I said, I don't know what this means, but I think my client's still providing documents to the lender. And I said, excuse, what'd you say? I said, can you follow up and check on that? And we have done nothing but put emotional energy towards that. And then emotions are really high because of course, it's a domino and everybody wants to know who did what wrong. And it was like, this was so smooth. And then all of a sudden, also don't spend your paychecks before you close.
Playing
If you're
the
new,
blame
please
game
don't.
gets you nowhere.
Right, it won't.
Pointing fingers is irrelevant. There is always enough blame to go around to whoever, the
Right.
lender, the buyer's agent, or whatever. That just doesn't get you anywhere. So you got to keep your emotions in check and like, what are the next steps?
Yeah.
I wish Lance was here because Lance is our legal guy. He knows it through and through. And Cindy, you've been around a long time. Maybe you can help me with this too. Once closing fails to happen, you're right as a seller is to give them what the contract says, which is usually notice they have 5 days to close, or you can declare the deal null and void.
Yes.
You can't, even though they're in breach of contract the day that it isn't closed, you can't just declare the deal null and void and take another offer.
Correct.
Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
I serve 5 days before they're supposed to close, just to rattle their cage and say, okay, clock's ticking, are you gonna make this work or not? What do you mean?
On
They're
a
not just
normal
gonna-
on a normal transaction you serve?
Well, it says if you don't get so
Sure.
many people
Yeah.
don't fill in the
Yeah.
date, they leave it or whatever. And if, say they put in November 7th, they'd have it, November 8th, I call and say, well, don't have it, so I hate to say it, but I'm gonna have to serve you 5-day notice.
Let me
And
ask
they
you
go, what
this.
does that mean?
See, my only thing with that would be like, we've had deals that have closed 48, 72, 4
But you
days after
usually know
closing.
that.
Yeah, but if you serve that, let's say
Yeah.
5 days before we close, and it's null and void, then it's null and void that date. So anything you close after that, you could be, you've nullified.
But
That's
then
right.
they can, by providing it, that null and voids the null and void.
Gotcha, providing the commitment
Right.
prior
Then-
to the
Yes.
expiration.
Yeah, because
I
that's all they
agree.
have to do is a commitment. You don't have to close
Right,
within
provide
5
the-
days. It's
okay.
just the commitment.
Okay,
The other thing that I do, which is kind of borderline questionable, but
Who's on?
remember, we're online,
Who's on?
we're on video here.
It's Brandon.
But when I am the listing agent and they give me the pre-approval letter, a couple days after I get it,
Mhm.
I call the agent and said, I just want to introduce myself and provide some phone numbers for you. And 9 out of 10 times I might know the lender anyway. And just say, here's my name, my phone number. I go to all my appraisals, which I do. I know that sounds stupid. I go to all my inspections, all my appraisals, just the need to know. And a little heads up, I don't talk to the appraiser. I use the appraisal as a time to pull my sign and lockbox. And so when they say, well, we'd like to come out at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, I say, okay, no problem. I can meet you there. And they say, oh, no, you don't need to be there. I said, well, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm there to pull my sign and my lockbox. And that's what I do when I sit in the car. But 9 out of 10 times, they like that. They say, we didn't get a copy of the purchase agreement. Wells Fargo's famous for not providing their appraisers with a copy of the purchase agreement. So before I go to the appraisal, I make a copy of the purchase agreement, a copy of everything I think they might need, and say, well, I think I've got that in the car here. You win points. And when it's a question, and you're not talking to the appraiser, when it's a question between, gee, are we on the number or just a little bit off, I go, well, I think we're there. And then the thing when you provide that to the lender, say, I do go to the appraisals, here's my number or my email, and please call because I'm the contact. A lot of times they don't know. Do we call the seller? Do we call the other realtor? They don't know who the contact is. So you're providing information so you're not breaking any rules. But in that way, they will likely, not saying guaranteed, but they will likely call if they're running into a jam. They may call and say, hey, we don't have an appraisal yet, but we're working on it. I didn't ask. They just told me. It's amazing how much information is provided to a listing agent just by calling and introducing yourself and giving.
Sure. You also could get some, an appraiser calling you too and say, hey, listen, before I submit this, I'm coming in shy. And if there's anything you want to contribute to this, please let me know. And yeah, give me 24 hours to try to see my market and hand that in to you, show you how I arrived at where we're
It's a
at.
team. I
So,
tell people,
yeah, they generally have the same information you do, but maybe you can talk through some things or talk through some updates they're not registering or didn't see right away. And I think it's a nice gesture by the appraiser to reach out to you and just say, hey, am I missing something here? So, and now I'm gonna switch gears on you to go to the buyer, because what's happening when you're representing the buyer, you got to set expectations for them too. First of all, for me, when it comes to looking at a house, I am pointing out all the good, the bad, the ugly as I see it. But what I've noticed in my business is that not only does it instill confidence in them that I'm educating them in these things and kind of separates me from the rest of the pack, but it also helps me keep deals together because the inspection is not a complete revelation of everything the inspector is telling them. So if the inspector tells them, hey, this roof might not only have 5 years left on it, they usually have heard that from me already. If there's some rotten windows and stuff, they've already heard that from me. If this furnace has lived its life expectancy, they've heard that from me. If it has 2 ground wiring, they've heard that from me, right? And the entire thing. So we've already negotiated. If there's an asbestos pipe or asbestos pipe, they've heard that from me. If there's galvanized plumbing or, all that stuff. So when the inspector gets there, they've already got a really good base knowledge of the home's working components. And the inspector's everything in there is not a complete revelation. I'm also prepared my buyers that during the inspection, we are looking for structural, mechanical, and safety issues to address. We're not looking for little nicks in the wall. We're not looking for these things, okay? Go ahead.
So what would you do if you were the listing agent and you received an inspection request that said the rust stain in the mechanical room, not finished, needs to be removed? The rust stain from the floor.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you got to pick your battles, right?
I consider that cosmetic, but tell me if I'm crazy.
No, I consider it cosmetic too. I consider it cosmetic as well. But again, I can buy some CRL and probably take care of it in a few, pour and a quick mop. So it's not something that I would probably dig my feet into and say, you're crossing a line. There are some things that I consider cosmetic that I would do that for, but that probably wouldn't be one of them. But I would definitely be like, shake my head like, that's not a buyer's agent prepping their buyer on what we should be addressing when we're here.
It's one of our agents.
They should probably be in this class,
Yeah.
Probably should
Yeah,
be in this class.
I would never say anything, but it was just really difficult to tell my
Yeah.
sellers
Yes.
this.
This is why you
And
set,
then they
this is
thought
why,
they could
this is why we're
walk,
on this
they
class.
said yes.
If you set this expectations with your buyers up front, they should not be asking for this.
Yeah,
This is why
Yeah.
we do this,
yeah.
right? There's going to be
But then my
enough.
sellers were like, could they walk on this?
Well, and
You
then,
know?
and it's also when we're talking to a seller, hey, listen, the buyer's gonna be looking for structural, mechanical, safety issues. Well, give me an example. Structural issues that are unknown tend to bomb a deal.
Yes.
Like they tend to be very expensive. Mechanical issues are on the borderline of being, air conditioner doesn't work that needs to be replaced, or, an electrical panel that needs to be updated. These can be expensive and costly as well. Safety issues tend to be very nominal, a window that's caulked shut or painted shut, a smoke detector that isn't firing, extension on the water heater for the pressure relief, all legitimate GFCIs, all legitimate stuff, but safety issues that should be addressed, okay? So I'm going through these with the buyer and letting them know. Also, letting them know that, hey, this is a used home. They're gonna, remember we talked about this, they're gonna pull pictures on here. There are gonna be holes and they don't patch them. That's gonna be on you to patch and paint, okay? Oh, we're gonna repaint the home anyway. Fantastic. Also, during the final walkthrough, this home is not gonna be, more than likely not gonna be vacant when we do the final walkthrough. When I'm talking about the 4 ways to protect yourself, right? The seller's disclosure, the inspection, the home warranty, and the final walkthrough, that's the time that I tell them that these people more than likely, I don't know, we're gonna need our sale in order to close on their new place, and they won't get access to the new place until we close. There is going to be a delay, right? And you set up that possession and that closing and possession right up front. That's why those have been separated. And here's the thing, it's like, there might be, what happens if there's some damage? There might be. There might be a nick in the wall that wasn't there. There might be a small damage. Generally, that's considered normal wear and tear when you're moving out. Again, we're not buying a brand new home. when you're repainting and patching some of those walls, we can take care of that at that time too. Now, if there's something, then every now and then there is something that is like, oh, they ripped off a cabinet door on accident. Now we have a little bit of more of an issue. You know, closing's taking place, move-in date after. I've known some listing agents want a little bit of some money in that reserve. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to handle that. I don't think we gotta go through every single scenario. As we're just trying to go through really keeping deals in place, as the training exercise. So I'm saying, setting these expectations, having these conversations with buyers up front. Now when we're doing the final walkthrough, they're not surprised that everything's in boxes and everything's moved in the middle. You know, what are we there to do at a final walkthrough? We're there to make sure the home's in the same condition it was when we bought it, and we're there to make sure any repairs that were agreed upon as the result of the inspection are done to our satisfaction. That's what we're there to do. So.
I had this happened 2 times and it hadn't happened to me yet, so I just wanted to see if anybody else had this happen to them. We were in the midst of an inspection, and the day of the inspection, the agent, listing agent, sent me an email and said, "Hey, Michelle, out of respect for you, I just wanted to let you know, the seller will not be doing anything based on the inspection, nor tend to any radon. There is a second offer in place." And I said, okay, this was on email. So I immediately turned and told my clients that, because I thought it was really important to know. But I think that that's really interesting. Like, in my opinion, one bad move, if I didn't have control of my buyers, we would have asked for some crazy stuff and we would have passed it back to the sellers and they would have said, no, thank you, deal's done. They're moving on to the second.
Well, wait a second.
They can't
Yeah.
just move on.
No.
Right.
Well,
The buyer would have the opportunity.
but if we couldn't work it out, because my buyer was prepped and ready to ask for things.
No, no, I'm saying,
The seller can say, I'm not doing anything.
and the buyer.
Buyer
can
can
Buyer
still
can
buy.
accept that.
Yeah, exactly. But I had to really rein him in because he felt very offended. We knew the second offer was there, but they were still very much there. But receiving that the day of, basically the house is sold as is what it was. And I was like, well, thank goodness that worked out. And my client and I have a good relationship, but that in theory should have been set on the listing. I mean, it's sold as is. Seller's not going to do anything, not told to me the day of the inspection.
Sometimes I've had buyers get upset during the negotiations. Says, okay, I negotiated as far as I can go. There's no way I'm fixing anything on the inspection. So sometimes they don't know until they negotiate the deal. So they wouldn't say as is up front.
Okay, good point.
You know what I'm saying?
Good point.
Because they got beat up so bad on the negotiation.
Yeah.
Yes. I just thought that, but then my client, so I had to handle emotions, all kinds of critical conversations being had now that he's like, well then basically and then he sat and stewed and then he called me back and he's like, so my inspection was for none. And I said, not at all. I said, you have peace of mind.
You know.
And I said, you know, your radon results. And he's like, okay, well, I'm glad I called you. You know, so it was,
Yeah.
but it was interesting that I almost had the threat twice of, and then on another transaction, they said the other second offer, you know, basically if you ask for too much, we will go to the second offer. So just be mindful. You want to make sure you're alone.
And also I would tell my buyer that's irrelevant. We're gonna go after what we're interested in. If they want to go after a pie in the sky offer that's out there that may or may not ask for something too, or you know, that's on them. Let's do us and
We can control
yeah.
that.
And also as a seller, if you're on the other side of that, and the seller's like, hey, listen, I'm doing this as is. Let's just see what they present. You know, GFCIs might cost us a couple $100. You know, opening up a window with a straight knife just to get it open might not just be some time and effort. To really dig your feet into the sand and say as is, that scares people.
It does.
Like, what do you know that I don't know as is? What do you mean?
But not even that, I had an offer a couple weeks ago that put on a house, and it was an as-is house, but we still had a 10-day inspection period, and the agent called me back, it's like, you know it's as-is, why are you doing an inspection? I'm like, I have the right to do this. I'm just like, but you know it's as is. I'm like, I'm aware, but we're still gonna do the
Yeah,
inspection.
can we figure out what
Because
as
if
is
you
means?
find something right, we're not gonna buy the house. He's
Right.
like, well, can you update that, take out the inspection period? I'm like, are we not on the same page here? Like, I still have the option to do it. He's like, but I wrote as is in the MLS. I'm like,
Oh, it's only
Yeah,
the
we're
MLS.
here.
Let's talk about that. As is does not mean you're taking the property as is.
Yeah.
That just means you're waiving your inspection rights. You have the chance to figure out what as is means, and if you're comfortable with that. And if you're not comfortable with that, then I would still send over your inspection request. Let the seller tell you no. And if, well, we said it was as is, I know you said it's as is, but I wanted to send this over because I thought we might still be able to keep the deal together. If you don't want to do this, then we'll go ahead and send over the cancellation. But I didn't want to just immediately send over the cancellation without giving you a chance to keep this deal together.
Right.
You know, we're talking about GFCIs here, and maybe they put that back on you, and you can tell a buyer, hey, you know, for the cost of your inspection, you're walking away for this. You know, but
Well, so many agents use it as a threat. They think you're gonna be just like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna do anything. So what I like to do when they say that, well, that's good to know, but I'm gonna send it over anyway. And I make a copy of the sections, like saying the furnace, this is this, or electrical this, or water this, and I don't give them the whole inspection, I just give them the parts, attach it to the request, and send it over, and then when they say seller will do nothing, say, well, now you have information to amend your disclosure for the next buyer. And then sometimes they think twice.
Cindy's brutal.
I am.
She ain't messing around, she's a ninja.
Because a lot of times they will say, when they know that they have to do that,
She will nunchuck you.
they think, okay, if it really is efficient, the next buyer is gonna ask for it.
Exactly.
And then we don't know if the next buyer is really gonna go.
Right.
And we've got this one now. 50% of the time, they'll say, well, we'll do 1 and 3, but not 4 and 5.
Yeah. Everybody in this class is ruined the day that Cindy brings them an offer, like, holy.
I know exactly how to negotiate.
I'm giving all my secrets away.
She's not getting.
Yeah.
And just remember, comments on the MLS are not an agreement between parties. If it's not on the purchase agreement, it's immaterial.
Well, and they do have to change.
Well,
that.
let's go with the buyer inspection request really quick, because I don't think you can be specific enough. And I see people put stuff on there all the time, and I know what they mean, but let's don't leave it up to someone's interpretation, right? If we're gonna get a new roof as a result of an inspection, let's make sure a couple things are on there. Number one, a complete tear off of existing shingles, right? And then what type of shingles are we gonna put back on? I would recommend a 30-year plus architectural laminate, 3-tab laminate shingle by a licensed professional, paid receipt at closing with warranty. Is that specific enough?
Transferable warranty.
Transferable warranty.
There
There
you
you
go,
go.
said architectural 3-tab.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
they're, I guess, the same thing, right?
No, they're different
Oh,
shingles.
they are, okay. But I would be that specific though. If I was gonna say replace rotten windows, I would probably say southwest bedroom, southeast bedroom, you know,
Yeah,
vinyl,
rooms or whatever.
vinyl, double hung vinyl, you know, replacement window. I don't care if it's, you know, Pella, I don't care if it's Window World or whatever, as long as it's that style window. You know, if you're gonna replace a water heater, what type of gallon is it? Is it 40 gallon, 50 gallon, 30 gallon? Your refrigerators, if we're gonna leave a refrigerator with the sale of the property, let's make sure we're outlining the stainless steel one in the kitchen, not the green one in the basement that they're gonna swap out right before closing. That's happened too.
Actually, on all mine, I put refrigerator present at time of showing.
In current use in the kitchen.
Yeah,
That's what they-
yeah, because
Oh, yeah.
I had one, someone say, well, we wanna take, they said refrigerator, they didn't say which one, we wanna take the basement refrigerator and leave it upstairs in the kitchen. No.
And the reason I write that way is because I take pictures of the showing of the ones we're talking about for the keeping.
Right.
Right, as in MLS pictures.
Yeah, that's another way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to do it.
That might
It makes
work,
me nervous
but-
because they could change their photos, I guess, if they wanted to.
Well, but you still have to, like, when you would have sent them to your client, they still are the same ones.
Yeah, I just don't think you can be too specific enough, and that way, keeping deals together, right, we're going to final walkthrough, and then all of a sudden you have something that wasn't what was anticipated, right? Here's another one too that happened to me is, a lot of times you'll go there and you'll see a new electrical panel, or you'll see a new roof, and or a new deck. Public record will show you if there was a permit pulled. Okay, if that's a concern of your buyer, then they, you know, do that research for them and let them know where that research is available. There are a lot of house flippers out there that will have a panel replaced, and it looks like it was done by a licensed electrician, but it wasn't done correctly. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on that's wrong
Receipts.
and unsafe. So, we had a house that sold, I was the buyer's agent, and her boyfriend's dad was with the city of Des Moines. And it was one of these inspections I couldn't get to. And I'm usually on the tail end of it. I don't go to all of them and sit with them. I just go on the tail end. I just want to see the highlights. And I've been on hundreds of them. So I wasn't able to get to this one, but boyfriend's dad came and noticed the electrical panel was replaced. Noticed there wasn't a permit. He called his buddies at the city, and the city called the seller, and the seller was hot. Long story short, the seller wrote a check for $3,800 to get that panel updated the way it should have been all along. There's a lot of unsafe things about it. He really never would have known by an inspector just taking the lid off of it and seeing that there was, no overfusing or something like that. But there was a lot of things wrong with it. So
How do you know? I mean, how,
it right on the assessor site will show you information.
no, I mean, had he not been there, that might have went unnoticed, right?
Yeah, I mean, and
I mean, because you-
literally, it says in our purchase agreement that the seller is not responsible to bring things up to code as a result of the inspection, but his updates that are required, which are HVAC, electrical and plumbing, generally require an inspector. And listen, if your client ever decides to rent that out, they are married to whatever work is there. Meaning, if it wasn't done properly or done with a permit, you now have to get one. And if it's all wrong, and you want to rent that out, you're tearing it all out. You're redoing it all. So, and they really frown on people doing that work. Same thing with decks and stuff. The way that the steps are and the treads and how high they are. John can tell you all about that. The way they're footed and, their handrails having to be able to grab onto them. They're sticklers for that. So there's a lot of decks, there's a lot of electrical panels, there's a lot of stuff that are going on that don't have permits pulled. And I'm not saying make a big fuss and tell your buyer that all these things have to be pulled permit, but they should know. That way, if we get to the closing or there's an issue, or we get to the inspection and there's an issue, we're addressing it now, not bombing 2-3 weeks from now. So
Sometimes the buyers don't care though, and when they say, oh, I don't care for permit, what's the big deal? Then I put together a little form saying, buyer has been made aware that permits were not pulled on this property and indicates that it's acceptable to them knowing that they were no permits.
there you go.
Then you're covering yourself.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
sometimes you have to cover yourself. When your
Correct.
buyers are in love with the house and they don't care what they did. Because they're gonna forget that later and they're gonna take you to court. Because you didn't tell them they really needed a permit.
right.
Cover your-
One of the ways that you guys can tell, by the way, the city of Des Moines requires you to take the meter outside when you pull a permit. So if you see a brand new panel in a home and that meter is still there, their permit was definitely not pulled. Okay?
These electrical issues, I guess I've always just relied on the invoice. A licensed contractor will do all work and invoices will be provided.
Yeah, but
I've never gotten into the permit.
what happens if it was done not as part of the inspection, but it was done just when you showed it? You know what I mean?
He's talking about stuff that's done before.
Yeah, that's
already
already done. So an inspector goes in there and they undo the panel. They're looking for overfusing wires. They're looking for double tapping.
Right.
That's all. They don't know. They're looking for a wire that maybe not gauge right for the breaker, and they're looking for one wire going into it, not two. And it's the double tapping. They don't really have they just have a little broad knowledge of everything. They're not, they're not gonna be able to tell you. In this case, one case is this electrician pulled in wires, it wasn't long enough. So they took another pair of wires to put onto and then bring it down into the panel. You never would have known that. And they also didn't bring the correct mass in. Coming in from the home, it was smaller than what it needed to be. It was just a whole bunch of
Sounds
unsafe.
like the inspector should be watching for whether, like you said, in Des Moines, they would have put a whole new meter outside.
I've also,
I know
He'll say
I know
defer
that,
to a
actually, so
licensed
Would
electrician.
they?
I know that myself, as you do now too. So if you're in Des Moines and you see that, that's another thing that you can point out to your buyers that that adds, Jacqueline knows her stuff, man.
So are you saying that if it was done when you made the offer, but before the inspection, how would you know? Was
That's
that-
what I think he's saying.
Okay,
is
well,
that it
if
was
they,
before.
if they say, well, we just did new electric last year, say, oh, wow, that is so great. Can you have a copy of that receipt? And you're gonna catch them. Or sometimes on the box, they'll have the name of the electrician, or on the furnace especially. And if they say, they don't have a receipt, I said, do they have a checkbook ledger, or can they go back to the bank and see what month it was, and then we can start checking around.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they produce.
Yeah, well, I'd say what, the HVAC people, sometimes they do the perfect job, but they'll replace a water heater and they won't pull a permit. It's just not that big a deal. And this, everything's done right, they just didn't pull a permit. So, you know, it just depends how important it is. I think your electric and stuff like that, after going through what I went through, is probably a little bit more important than, you know, HVAC, plumbing, and electric are the things that you really want a permit pulled for the city.
Never had that come up,
Mhm.
no issue, ever.
Well, I think I've also realized in the last couple of transactions how, not losing my faith in inspectors, but if something does go wrong, like the lack of, not even accountability, they just like don't care at the end of the day, because I had a seller who, when he looked at the sub pump, jiggled the pipes apart, they offset, and it was like summer when we had like 2 nights of really, really heavy rain, so they never had water in the basement. And then when he put the lid back, it
Shoved it
just
into the
spewed,
basement.
it was like a geyser in their basement.
Oh, wow.
So it was, and that was after we went under contract and we had to go back and update all that. And I mean, it was just a bad situation, he called the inspector, it was all yelling, the wife got, it was just really, really bad, but there was no recourse for anything he had done, or we couldn't even say like. this
Well, and
was-
you can't prove that the inspector knocked
You
it.
can't, but if they'd lived there 7 years, nothing was ever touched, and 2 days after he opened the sub pump, it all just
Right.
geysered out. But in that situation too, you just, no accountability, no acceptability, and just kind of like, don't ever call me again. And I've had that happen once or twice when if there's not even like been questions of like, hey, can you clarify this or that? It's almost, because they're not licensed, there's nobody regulating them, and not like, you know, you can not report them, but there's no.
Well, keep a list of the.
Oh, yeah, all that, yeah, there would
Yeah, there's no
definitely-
oversight. Hopefully that'll change. Hopefully tomorrow will
But
come
when you're
down.
representing the sellers and the buyer gets to choose who they use.
Exactly.
It's like you're opening up the house for
Exactly.
someone
Yeah.
potentially.
Exactly.
So having some of those inspections up front might be a good idea, or at least offer that as part of your service package, you know, that might be something to help keep
What
deals
do you
together.
use, Michelle?
Mayor Spec.
And I'll tell you this, I don't know this for sure, Michelle, you can say whether I'm right or wrong, but do they give you a deal knowing you're gonna do this up front to them, a better deal than what they might for a single buyer?
Given the quantity, yes,
Okay,
based on numbers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
so they might provide your seller a better deal, or if you're paying it as part of your package, you know, they might say, listen, I take so many listings a year, and I'll probably convince 70% of them to do this, or I do 100% of my listings, and
Please don't say that to Neil, that I sent you to do that, but just know that,
well, if it's not him, it'll be somebody else. There's
yes,
somebody else.
exactly.
There's
Yeah.
somebody else that's
Have the
willing to
company
have.
recognize how much business you're sending them, because we send a
Yeah.
lot of business to a lot of people.
They'll be fine with probably cutting,
Yeah.
instead of a $400 inspection, a
Yeah.
$300 inspection, or $250, to get
Exactly.
through there and give you a report to save you some money.
What's everybody doing on sewer? Has anybody got caught lately? On a sewer inspection? I don't include a sewer inspection.
I just did one on Friday.
You just know, between 1941, right? We know those Orangeburg, but it's not just Orangeburg. There's clay tile
Right.
out there that is just have those conversations. If you're if you're between 1940, let's say, and
58 or 60 or
58 or
something
so, yeah, you're in that danger zone. If you don't know, we can find out for you, or let's just know this is a possibility during the sale that a buyer could do this, could
Right.
inspect. Well, I don't have any problems with my sewer. I never have. Okay, we're probably good. As long as you know they're probably gonna stick a camera down there and we'll deal with it at that time. But you have the conversation with them, Again, I get this class, if anything else, is prepping. Don't deal with stuff
Right.
as they come. Prep them up front of what might happen, what we might experience. That way, if we can't, if it does happen, man, how good do you look? You called it, it's not just navigating the problems as they come.
Mhm.
It's anticipating the problem and addressing it before it even becomes a problem.
I'd like
That's a
another-
sign of a true professional.
I'd like another perspective on radon, and I'll be specific, just because different places have different ideas on how to handle it. And again, prepping beforehand can ward off a lot of this, but I have been taught that radon is an actual material defect with the home. So even if the sellers say, we won't mitigate for radon, we don't want to know the results, if you're representing the buyer and your buyers want to get the test, they have the right to, under their inspection clause,
Mhm.
they get the test, it comes back high. Now what do we do with these results that the sellers say they don't want to have, right? If the buyer wants it to be mitigated, they can still ask.
Correct.
Once they've asked, the agent on the other side is now aware, and it's a material defect.
If you put the number, in
Or even if
the
you just say
inspection
it's
addendum.
high.
Well, let's,
Even if you don't
let's,
put the number,
let's,
even if
let's
you
first
just
of
say
all,
it's
let's
actually-
let's define, let's
We talked about
define
it.
what a material defect is. And it's not, a material defect is basically any material fact that would affect the decision to buy a home. It's not necessarily a mechanical issue.
Right.
It's any material fact
Mhm.
that would, that's why someone dying at home is such a gray area. Like some people
Yeah.
don't care and some people would care. Where is it out there? So, but I digress. Getting back to the radon issue, you cannot stick your head in the sand as a seller and say, I don't want to know the results. In fact, I'm almost certain that the radon company has to tell the seller the results, don't they?
That's
Well,
well,
they
be
send-
there, but they don't have to.
Yeah,
share the
they
results.
send it to the one paying the bill, so they send it to
So
Just
the.
like
buyer
inspection.
knows the
It's
results.
no different than inspection.
If you ask for it, generally they would say,
Mm-hmm.
at least on mine, the ones I've gotten, home tested at 0.9 PCLs, asking to be mitigated by a license. Now I know, so I would, and as a listing agent, don't do that. I don't care what your seller says. So we cannot stick our head, we cannot do that. I have to disclose every material defect that I have actual knowledge of. So if they come back to me and test and ask us to mitigate, we know it's higher than what the EPA standard is, and we'll have to disclose it. We can tell them we're not going to mitigate it.
But now we have to disclose.
We
it
still have to
every
disclose it,
buyer.
and every single buyer is going to want us to address it. Whether
Yes.
we have it mitigated, whether we're offering you credit for it. So.
So you're kind of saying what I've been taught, which is even if sellers have said, we don't want to know the results, we kind of get in a hard spot on both sides as agents because we know, and we have to present to the seller the inspection addendum in full.
And
We can't keep that
there's a lot of
just
sides to
ourselves.
this though. Now, we all know they test in the basement. What if it's an unfinished basement? And it comes in like at 5 or 6. What's the mainlet level like? That's where the living area is. You want to finish the basement? That's on you. Go ahead and finish the basement. It's high radon. Can we work out a credit here? Your buyer should pay for it. So again, have conversations with your buyer, have conversations with your seller. If you have conversations up front at the time of the listing, set the table.
Which I do
Then
with all
when
my
these things-
sellers,
well,
but
yeah.
it's more when I'm representing the buyer and
Well,
I've got a
and
seller who
And
says
that's
they
why
don't
we're
want to
having these
know.
classes. We all want to be more aligned with these things.
Well, I accidentally, did this a couple weeks ago, I didn't mean to, it kind of just happened that when I got the inspection report back, in part of the inspection report, like the last page was the radon report. So when the agent asked to see parts of it, I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and send it to you. I sent it to him with the radon attached to it, so then he knew, and he called me, he's like, why did you send this to me? Now I know, and I'm like, sorry, like, I didn't think,
And
like,
then that
yeah,
agent would have
exactly,
to
but
tell
then,
their-
but it's still, so we, actually, the deal did bomb, great, but I don't know if they haven't updated anything on disclosure, because I've seen it after
They
you
have
put it
to.
back on the
Yeah.
market.
It's like, I just have an issue with that as guys, it is our job and actually your individual responsibility to elevate this profession.
Mhm.
Every single one of you in here, individually and collectively as a group, as a company, that's what we're trying to do. Do not drag us down into the muck of it where we're salesy and that's not what we're about. These are too
It's a
big of
safety issue, let's all
purchases.
just fix it.
Too big a
$1,000
purchase.
Exactly.
$1,000.
And
You know?
as a buyer's agent, you're obligated to disclose to all parties. So you have to send it over to the listing agent. You're obligated to,
Yeah.
By mistake or not.
by mistake or not. If it's over
You're
4.0,
obligated to send it
you are
over.
obligated.
You can think of it that way too.
Well, I think if you do that test too, and the buyers send it over, let's say sellers say they're not gonna do it, and the buyers can still ask for it, the sellers can still say no.
The buyers can still accept it
Right.
as part of the thing.
But,
And
yeah,
let the buyers know it's $1,000. Typically.
I always say a report is available upon request, just as a respect thing, but maybe I should just,
Or which side are you on? I'm not,
if I'm on the buying side.
oh, if you're on the buyer
Mhm.
side?
I always say available upon request.
Yeah, once it hits 4.0, it's considered a material adverse fact and we have to disclose to all parties.
4 point or higher, or
4,
actually
4.0 or higher, yes.
higher. Is
I hate when
4.0
Michelle's saying
high?
that though, because you're trying to
They
avoid.
accept 4 or
raising
lower,
the spot.
or 4.1 is when we disclose?
I think it's
Let's see.
4.0 or higher.
Yeah, it says 4.0 or higher.
Okay.
4.0
I
is
think
the.
the easiest way to do it is right up front when you're negotiating the offer. Say the seller is going to add $1,000 to our negotiated price here in the event that radon comes in high. And they'll go, why are we putting $1,000 in there? Well, we feel that that's something that the seller will put some money into and the buyer may have to put some money into.
That
But
would
that
be a
way,
legal purchase agreement though, because you can't have two different prices. when you're
no,
signing
it's the
a deal.
end price. And if they say, well, we're not gonna do radon, and we're just not gonna deal with it, say, then we can bring it down to the other price. We're not changing the price.
You mean if they choose to test for radon?
If you just, say you negotiate and someone comes in with a 146 offer and you're at 155, you come to 150, then you say to the agent, and we're gonna add $1,000 to that, so we're gonna actually counter back at 151. And the seller will put $1,000 towards any radon mitigation that the buyer might ask for. And at that point, just put it in there. And if the buyer doesn't ask for it, you can renegotiate and put it back into a closing cost. Any lender will let you do that. You can amend down, you can't amend up. Then the buyer's saying,
You're just talking
okay,
about negotiating the price.
yeah, negotiating the price, because if you say, okay, there's $1,000 in there towards it, the radon system's gonna be more than $1,000. But it's saying that, okay, the seller's gonna put something in, the buyer's gonna put something in, but no right up front. Most buyers are like, oh yeah, we'll have radon. Oh yeah, we'll have this, we'll have that. They have no idea of the financial aspect that is involved. And no seller wants to hear after they negotiate the price, oh yeah, now we need another $1,500. Address it with the offer. And then you're not gonna have, number one, a buyer taking it frivolously, or if the buyer.
At least address it. And I tell you what, the last 90 to 120 days, buyers are being extremely aggressive on their inspection. And if they're asked, I've had people just hand me their inspection and say, not as but as a listing agent, the buyer's agent just hands me the inspection, even an email says, everything on there. Like, really? Like, you're not even gonna like ask for anything, particularly just everything on the inspection unit? Like, come on. But that's the way the buyers are going right now. Buyers expecting.
But are you seeing them walk when you don't do it all? You're not seeing them
Some
walk.
do.
I just tell the seller, I said, listen, we don't. They have the right to, so what do you really want to, what do you want to really do
Do
here?
they have a right to if something they've asked is cosmetic though? Like just the rusting
If we can't come to an
example that
agreement.
comes to mind, but
It
They're not
It
supposed to
doesn't,
do a lot.
it doesn't say in the purchase agreement that I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong. It
Well, that should've been
doesn't
something
say
they
what's off limits of being asked for as part of the inspection.
I think
Does
it's
it?
The part that leaves it open is the part that says material deficiencies. I mean, that's the only piece that's up for interpretation in there, other than,
safety structural.
right.
It doesn't say that, yeah.
Then you have buyers, they just like
There
ask
when
for
they walk
receiving in
through
the
the
garage
house.
and stuff because we're.
Oh, yeah, well, then they should have been aware that it was there.
The problem was once it was on the inspection request, what do I do with it?
I mean, I think the
Sometimes
biggest
they
thing
should-
though is just,
You guys are so
I was gonna say, if you ever have to rust again,
Yes, you did, but you didn't put the
It's
glass.
called wing.
Oh, I told him Lincoln this,
Solid
the seller's
panel, it
wife
wasn't one with
went to the
glass,
doctor
it's like the
It had
because
little
the
glass on
wing,
top.
she had
Yeah, well,
inhaled
they had
and she
little-
felt strange and.
Oh, dear
The one
God.
who's
Yeah,
out.
oh my gosh.
No,
It was a
not
whole-
the one
The one we put in,
It was great.
took out had a
Solid.
full view, and then we put one with little.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't the exact same
It was a
door?
better door.
I think the biggest thing that we can all do though is just really focus on setting expectations. Like, I think that's the whole point of this whole thing. Like, explain to your buyers, it's like your point, yeah. Can you do it? There's no rule that says you can't ask for this stuff, but let's be realistic. The whole goal is to find the best scenario for you and the best scenario for the other side and come together.
And the two biggest
Like-
ways that deals fall apart is the inspection and the financing. If you get past those hurdles, that's generally the holdup, and, so doing all the due diligence up front. Price doesn't always, you get multiple offers, we're a little bit out of that market now, but you multiple offers, look at both pre-approvals, they may not be the same. And there are some things that are worth money, having someone fully committed versus, someone who still has a litany of stuff that really hasn't been vetted all that well from an out-of-state rocket more, and I shouldn't brand somebody, I've had plenty of rocket mortgages I've gone through, but, branding that quick loans type thing. I mean, there are some things that, I think you need to bring to your seller's attention that might be worth more than a few $1,000s. Going through the house with your seller and knowing what could come up on an inspection, what FHA and VA could require, is not something you wait until the appraiser comes and hands you a bunch of crap. And what happens if there is peeling paint and we're sitting December 15th and January 15th? Can we still do this FHA, Michelle? Yeah, we can, but we're gonna have to get a bid. and we're gonna have to put 1.5 times the amount into escrow. It's gonna sit there until spring, until we can paint it, and then we'll release the money of the painter and you'll get the rest of the money back. Maybe we should get a painting bid right now, just to have that bid already on file. You know, see where I'm going with this? If there's a room that needs to be replaced and it's middle of winter, you know, there's generally the only way they're gonna let you escrow is if it's a weather-related thing. Otherwise, they don't wanna see escrows. Septic tank, we cover that, I know we're losing, we lost time. But septic tanks, you know, hasn't been pumped in 3 years. When's the last time that, you know, it's been out there?
Well, now it's required.
No, it's required, but you certainly
Yeah.
don't wanna wait until
Yeah.
at the end of closing, you realize that you need a distribution box replaced and it's January 20th.
You usually have the inspection done before you've been listed typically, don't you?
Yeah, I mean-
On septics.
I don't, because
The
if you've got
DNR
somebody
report-
tight on funds, then, you
It's
know, we
like
try to get it
$500,
paid out, you
yeah.
know, and if we've got a divorce type situation or something, I
So
try
you don't
to,
do the report until.
We do a whole,
I
a lot
do
of
about 3
divorces
weeks
these
out.
days, Michelle.
Oh, buddy, it's
Tis the
dicey.
season.
Dicey.
Just this year seems to be
I
a
just
lot
try
of
to get it
divorces. I don't
paid
know
out
what's up
at
with the
proceeds.
stars and moons, but
Mhm.
Well, the other thing with your buyers, not somebody will get cold feet, is right after the inspection signed off, I cut them off from that MLS auto email. Because I don't wanna hear 3 weeks later, oh, a better house just came on the market, how can you get us out of the one we just wrote on? Because I've had that
I have two.
many times.
I had
Cut
two.
them off, don't let them look anymore, you're done. Just, that's it.
I do want to circle back with the things that you can't get out of because of inspection. Like you guys do that pre-inspection. If the buyer is fully aware of information, so they've got a radon that comes back at 4.2, and they're fully aware of that, they have to address that in the purchase agreement.
Write it
They
in.
can't wait until they've negotiated a price, then come back at inspection time and say, oh, because it's 4.2, now we want the radon mitigated. Well, you knew that going into it. So anything that's already known, the inspection period is for those things that they don't know, that are not readily apparent. So that's why I love the pre-inspection. I think that's such a great
Now, when
mitigator.
they do that, do they tend to not do their own inspection?
They still do their own inspection sometimes.
They should.
I actually have quite a few that will accept what we have, but I definitely don't do 10 days. 'Cause
Isn't that a
there's
conflict
no
of
reason to give
interest
anybody
if you
10 days.
provide the inspection and say something happens a year down the road? And they said, well, the listing agent said it was an inspection and we didn't want to pay more money, so we just took her inspection. Do
That's
you
their
run into any
decision.
legal issues on that?
That's their
Well, it's
decision.
it's a third party, so it doesn't
Yeah.
mean she's doing the inspection. It's a
Mhm.
third party doing the inspection. You can-
Oh, yeah, you can go
vet
after a
the-
Amerispec, but not
yeah,
me.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can vet the inspector. I don't think that'd be a conflict of
I don't
interest.
think so, yeah.
Liability would only come up with the buyer's agent if the buyer's agent says, oh, no, you don't need to because they
Right.
already did.
How about if the buyer's agent said, oh, you need, well, let it go. I think I got that. Okay.
It's actually a cost saving for the buyers. Now, Amerispec will walk them back through the house and they can pay for that.
Because like when reloads do their inspections,
Oh.
and I do a lot of reloads, and people say, well, they already paid for an inspection because they have to. I said, don't take that inspection.
Yeah, I don't think an inspection. How many of you recommend an inspection on new construction?
Yes.
Always.
Every one of them.
Everyone, listen, builders miss stuff too.
Mhm.
In fact, one inspector told me, they missed drainage tile system. They just didn't put it in and tie it into the sump pump. You know, that'd be a hell of a way to figure out your basement isn't tiled right. You know, finished basement coming with water, brand new. So I would. In fact, just as a rule of thumb, as a professional licensed real estate agent, don't you ever not recommend an inspection period. I don't care how savvy the buyer, that's up to them. They can decide not to have one, but your recommendation is to always have a licensed inspector go through the home. That is my recommendation as a professional. It's your option, but I would highly recommend it. Get used to that verbiage. You know, there are times even I buy a home and I have it inspected. And I have bought and sold probably over 40 properties on my own, built, remodeled them. But there are times I want the sewer inspected. I want someone in the attic. You know, I can see it's got 2 ground and no GSCIs and old HVAC and needs a new roof, a new siding. I can see all that. But there are things that I don't see, you know, and I want to know. So how many homes have you been involved in with your dad? A few hundred. So, I mean, I'm supposed that probably, if you were buying something, you probably want to know some of those, this is going to take me out of my budget if I have to fix type things. Septics, sewers, attics, you know, someone walking on your roof and spongy or something, just things you're not gonna
Yeah.
get.
No, 'cause I'm
You might get up on there, I'm not getting on a roof. So I would always recommend inspection, always, and just get used to doing that, and that way, it's something they don't have one, because they are savvy buyers, that you know, something happens, they can't look at you and say, man, I was thinking about having one and you talked me out of it, you know?
Matt, the one thing I would just add is when you think about when we are true professionals and we are non-emotional when it comes to the inspections, that's when if we as professionals are even keel and they know that the agents are arguing, that would be silly if the agents were arguing. But if we can remain non-emotional and say my clients asked for this, John would say, okay, you know what? I'll present and get back to you. John comes back to me, here's what my client said. It's when people get involved and you get emotional, that's when we get goofy, and it's probably going back on the market because you know what, I'm gonna dig my foot in and I'm gonna, because I'm gonna be a B. You know, like we just don't get anywhere being a B, you just really don't. And so if we can be non-emotional about it and just professional, we get to the finish line really well. And when you see that person for the next listing, you'd be like, oh yeah, they're great to work with. You know, this is way too small of a community
Generally,
to not work well.
Generally, whatever situation you find yourself in, your client has options. It is your job to present those options and let them decide what is best for them. Well, the seller, buyer just denied your 3 or 4, which are options. I think that's kind of crappy of them that they don't want to do the radar and then not even, it's like, you're right, it is, they don't want to do it, they've dug their feet in. We can either have them fix what they agreed to and fix it and live with the other items, or we can cancel the purchase agreement and go get your earnest money back and go find another home. Those are your options, right? Seller has options. Just, it's 5 days before closing, we don't have a commit to close, all of a sudden closing doesn't happen, they're pissed off. You have an option, and we can divide business days to get closing and cancel this purchase agreement in 5 days, or we can amend the purchase agreement and give them the 7 days the lender wants to think that they can get this done. These are your options. To feed into their emotion, it doesn't help the situation at all. Okay, I think that's it. All right.
You grab your coat.
I know.
You're like, got my drop. Got my glasses, got my coat.
Now, I think there's anything you get out of this class.
Yeah.
Everything is done up front. Everything is done up front with systems. Don't be afraid to pre-write stuff out and hand it to them. What a seller should expect to do at closing, what a buyer should expect to do at closing, what a buyer should expect to be looking for on an inspection, right? Structural, mechanical safety. Then they're not worried about the holes in the screen and the little tear in the linoleum, all that stuff that shouldn't matter.